Chats with Firefighters. The men and women behind the helmet. Episode 3, Kim Hood, Fire Captain in Ohio. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Valeria.
Welcome to Chats with Firefighters. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm thrilled to have a woman firefighter today, Kim Hood, Fire Captain in Ohio, and the title that you chose for today's episode is Finding Work-Life Balance in the Lifetime of a Female Fire Horse, and I love it. And you have to tell us why you chose that title, and as you're aware, because we shared before, you know that it's the Fire Horse year in the lunar calendar. So tell me
It
more about
is.
your choice.
So, I did not know anything about Chinese horoscopes or Chinese astrology until after my child was born. And my child is now 24. So, going on a couple decades. At the time that he was born, I decided to research Chinese horoscopes for myself, my husband, and my child. And in that journey, I found out that I was a fire horse. So I looked up the Chinese kanji, the symbols for horoscopes, and I ended up getting some tattoos related to my husband, my child, and myself. And so I have a tattoo of this fire horse. So over 24 years, I've done a little more research. And as I've discovered, apparently the element and the symbol, they rotate. So there's 5 elements and there's 12 symbols. These symbols rotate over time, but it doesn't repeat until 60 years. So this is my grand return. I am in my 60th year. I turned 60 this fall. So I am, quote unquote, the fire horse, and this is kind of a big year for me. And so recently been doing some more research on it, and it's very interesting how events in my life have paralleled leading up to a year of passion and moving forward, essentially pushing through the boundaries just like horses do. And then the year of the fire horse is even more dynamic, more passionate, and faster. So I
Ooh.
think I know. So it's a very exciting year. So I
I
really
love
appreciate this
it.
opportunity.
I love it. And a fire horse for a firefighter is, like a little bit of a destiny sign.
It really is. And I had actually become a firefighter in 1996, and the research for the tattoos wasn't until 2002. So it sounds like I kind of literally put the cart in front of the horse in this scenario. And here we are.
Wow. Well, I'd love to talk about your journey. So let's begin with that, like talking about how you got to be a firefighter. Was that something that you always wanted to be, or how did your career begin?
So going back to high school, I think that I'm probably going to have to jump a little bit back and forth.
That's
In
great.
high school, I wanted to be a mechanic. My mom told me, "You're not going to be a mechanic, you're going to go to college." I responded with, "Fine, I'll be a mechanic in college." And that's what I did. So I went to college. I actually became a teacher. And while I was in college, I went to Bowling Green, Ohio for the university. And while I was in college to become a teacher, I did end up working at a gas station. So I worked at a gas station that had full service mechanics, and they taught me a lot about vehicles. They taught me a lot about mechanics overall. And it turned out that I had a predisposition to mechanical type analysis, which is incredibly helpful on the fire department, kind of jumping ahead with that. So I graduated with my degree in teaching. I ended up making a big adventure of life, and I moved to Alaska and drove across the country, worked in Alaska for a couple of years, came back, ended up working here in Ohio again. And I was teaching in an inner city school, primarily a daycare, but they had a goal to create a city kindergarten in the daycare. And this was a new concept. And this was in about 1994, 1995. Um, so what I ended up doing is I got in touch with the public system in my area, got all of their credentials, everything that needed to be accomplished during that year, and I created the first kindergarten outside of a public school system in this private daycare. Through that process, I ended up meeting the fire department. So the fire department would come out and do fire safety with the students, stop, drop, and roll. Don't be afraid of firefighters. Here's our gear. And at the time, I was competing in bodybuilding. So I was incredibly fit. And they kind of pulled me aside after one of our events and said, "Have you thought about being a firefighter?" And I said, "No, not really." Well, our relationship continued for a couple of years. And during that process, I started thinking about it a whole lot more. I really enjoyed teaching. I was very good at teaching, but I kind of needed a little bit more from the physical aspect of life, with the background in bodybuilding and weightlifting and the mechanical background. Those few parts of my life weren't met as easily with teaching as they would be with firefighting.
But they were young kids,
They
right?
were
So
really
the
young kids.
physical aspect is
The
good.
physical, yes, that was very good. I definitely
Yeah.
had the energy for them, but it was not a physically demanding job. I spent a lot of time sitting on the
Hmm.
floor. So not a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's always good to be able to sit on the floor and be able to get up, but it just wasn't really what I was looking for. So I ended up applying, and in the test that I took, it must have been offered in early 1995. The numbers that I'm recalling are about 8,000 people signed up, and there were about 2,600 that took the test. There were only 600 that passed the test, and I was in one of the first 100 that were hired.
That's great. There's a lot of competition. Every time I'm talking to someone, I'm realizing how hard it is to get in.
Yes. Yes, it is not a job that is handed to you. Currently, there are nuances that can be in your background that will help you get hired. If you have a military background, it gives you extra points. If you have a paramedic or an EMT education prior to being hired, that will help you to get hired. But you still have to pass the test. And then, even after you pass the test, when you get hired, you have to still complete 26 weeks of training before you're ready to come out on the street. And during that period of time, there's intense scrutiny over everything. There's scrutiny over,
Hmm.
are you in uniform every day? Are you in time every day? Are you doing everything that you're told that you're supposed to do every day and not doing everything that you're told not to do? If you're told to use a black pen, you have to use a black pen. It's no arguing, no
Hmm.
nothing. That's what you're told to do. So it's similar to the military. It's not identical, not nearly as strict, and you certainly won't end up in Leavenworth if you break the rules, but you will lose your job. They teach you that you are supposed to follow the rules, and the rules are normally very, very clear. So it's not hard to do that.
I'm hearing that the difference is it's very military. You just don't scream at each other.
We don't scream. Well, I shouldn't say that. Many people do scream at some people. Honestly, there is a lot of screaming in the fire department because we are going into people's homes
Hmm.
and they are having their very worst day ever,
Yeah.
no matter what the scenario is. Their
Hmm.
mom may be having a heart attack. Their child might have been found in a bathtub. Their house could be on fire. There is a lot of screaming.
Hmm. The screaming involved.
There is screaming involved, but that's actually
Yes.
part of the job. You have to be able to compartmentalize that screaming. They may be literally directly screaming at me, but it's not personal. They're screaming because they don't know
Hmm.
how to handle this situation. And therefore, it's my job to figure out how to get them calm enough to explain what the problem is so that I can solve their problem.
So can we just go back into your journey? So you obviously got selected. How many women were selected when you were selected? Because I'm guessing at the time there was not that many women firefighters.
Thank you for asking about that. There were not. At the time, we had 525 people total working for the department, and we had 20 women.
Hmm.
So, some quick math, I believe that's under about 3%.
Yeah. So you were like the very few chosen.
One of very, very few chosen. And I got hired in 1996. The first women came on the job in 1984. So, only 20 women were hired in 12 years.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's not very much. And then my
No.
class added 5. So essentially another 25% to the group, depending on how you want to do your statistics. That's a big jump. And currently we have nearly 600 people on our department and we have around 75 women. So it's significantly higher now.
Yeah, it's still a little percentage compared to men, but it's like a big step
Yes.
towards more women representation. How hard was it? Did you begin as a firefighter? What was your first title when you got in?
So our department is very straightforward. And what happened with that test that I took, they actually hired a class. We had 10 people that were paramedics out of those 600 people that had passed the test. And those 10 were hired about 6 months before me. So those 10 paramedics came on and they went into training. They were taught how to be firefighters. So they came out as firefighter paramedics. In my class, none of us were paramedics. None of us were EMTs. So what they did with us is they sent us to about 20 weeks of regular training to become firefighters. And then they sent us to about 5 weeks of training to become EMTs. So when we graduated, we were firefighter EMTs. And the difference between paramedics and EMTs is about 2,000 hours of training.
I was going to ask you, so thank you. I was like,
Yep.
what's the difference between EMT and
Yes.
paramedic?
So a lot of people are very familiar with the hierarchy of a doctor and a nurse. So a nurse may take anywhere from 2 to 4 years to go to school, and then a doctor goes to school for about 12 years. Being an EMT would be very similar to being a nurse, and being a paramedic would be very similar to a doctor percentage-wise for schooling. But that's all done pre-hospital. So all
I see.
of our medical stuff, we do training in a hospital setting, but everything that we're taught to do is called pre-hospital treatment, which means that we end up going to a car accident and we have somebody who's got a broken leg. And so we will stabilize that leg. We can't diagnose that it's broken. Only doctors diagnose. We can treat pain because we work under a medical director, and both EMTs and paramedics can help in different ways. So when I came out of the academy, I was an EMT, and then about 5 years later, I became a paramedic. So I've been a paramedic now for about 25 years. So now as a paramedic, I'm able to help patients a lot more. I can do far more for the patient as a paramedic than I could as an EMT, in a similar way that a doctor personally can do a lot more for a patient than a nurse can. A nurse will make you feel a lot better. The EMTs are great at our patient care, but the paramedic is truly responsible for, if they're not breathing, I have the ability to put a tube in their throat. If they have a lung collapse, I have the ability to literally put a needle in their chest and help reinflate a lung.
You got to be a paramedic 5 years in.
Yes.
And then after, becoming a paramedic, you were a firefighter paramedic. And then, because I know you're a fire captain, so there's a and then,
There is an
right,
and
in your
then.
career.
So what I've discovered recently is apparently I go back to school or I look for advancement every 5 years. And I didn't know that until very recently. So I got hired in 96. I became a paramedic in 01. Then I ended up, the department that I work for is very positive towards education. So they actually paid for me to become a registered nurse. And so I became a registered nurse around 2006, 2007. And then in 2011, I became a lieutenant. So that's the first step in promotions in our department. And that entails reading around 2,000 pages of books and taking a test. And now they have added in something called an assessment center. So I did not have to do the assessment center, but they've discovered that it's a good idea to have that added into the system.
So is it like what is the assessment center? They just make sure that the person is ready for an advancement, or
Yes.
what do they do in the assessment?
So in the assessment center, actually, they are in the role of the officer and they are put into different scenarios that we would come across on a daily basis that include angry clients in an EMS setting and actual fires. And they have to run actual fires and they throw nuances in that have actually happened in our city.
So meaning that someone's screaming at you because you have to react
Yes.
in a good way.
Yes.
I
Yes.
see.
So they essentially put somebody, I'm going to use the old line, trial by fire. You know what I mean? It's a simulated fire, but from what
Yeah.
I understand, they have a big screen with the scene playing through it so that you can quote unquote see the house that's on fire. We're taught about different ways to describe what's going on with the house. Each side of the house has a different name. So the side that we approach, like where your front door is side alpha. So it uses a military letter assigned to the letter
Mm-hmm.
A. So we have side alpha, and then it goes clockwise around the house. So if it's on the left side of the house, you're on side Bravo. If it's on the back side of the house, it's side Charlie. And if you're on the right side of the house, it's side Delta. So you might have a screen showing you a fire, and you're expected to say where that fire is. And then
Mm.
the first floor of the house is called Division 1. The second floor of the house is Division 2. So you might be looking at a picture on a screen and you'll say heavy smoke showing on all divisions, fire showing on side Bravo, Division 2. So that would explain that there's smoke coming out on the first floor and there's fire being seen on the second floor. That fire's probably been going on for a little while, because that means that the smoke's moved down into the first floor and pushing out the windows. So it tells
I
us a lot
see.
about the type of fire it is. It may have started in a bedroom, but it's been going on for a little while.
I mean, I'm guessing if you want to be advanced in your career, you already been fighting a few fires.
Yes. In the city that we're in right now, you cannot even take the lieutenant's test until you've got 5 years on the job. I'm sorry, I misspoke. You cannot take the lieutenant's test until you have 7 years on the job. They keep making it longer because they've shown why. And you can't take the captain's
Mm-hmm.
test until you have 10 years on the job. And that's because we had a person that was hired in 1992 that was incredibly smart, and they did very, very well on the tests. The problem came in, they took the lieutenant's test and scored number 1 with 3 years on the job. And then they took the captain's test and they only had
Mm.
5 years on the job. And that was allowed, but they did not have the experience.
Yeah. I mean, being a captain comes with knowing also having a little bit of maturity, I'm guessing, as a person as well.
Very much so. Very much
Because you
so.
have to deal with a team, you have to deal with different personalities, and I'm guessing, it takes experience and some kind of a distance
Yes.
with the
Yes.
job and
So you can be hired at the age of 18 in the city that I'm working in. So the youngest
as a
you could be
firefighter.
as a firefighter EMT. So
Hmm.
realistically, the youngest captains from this point forward are going to be 28 or older, which is helpful. Because
Yeah, that's great.
right, because you are aware that the brain matures at different levels, and we're under a lot of stress. So sometimes when you're under stress, things don't even mature as quickly as they do outside of that stress. So I think that it was a good choice for our department to the move the goal line, so to speak,
Hmm.
farther because of what they had seen.
So in your department, because you keep saying firefighter, EMT, or firefighter, paramedic, all the firefighters are also EMTs or paramedics?
Yes. So
Because it's different in different cities.
it
Because I've
is.
been talking with firefighters more locally, and there are firefighters and paramedics,
Yeah,
and they're not the same person.
exactly. And in fact, most people are familiar with FDNY being the New York City Fire Department. The New York City Fire Department does not treat patients for EMS. The fire department in New York has a totally separate division that is EMS only. So it's
Mm.
not one that I can explain well because I can't say that I understand it well. But that is a big example of somebody who does it very differently than what we do.
Feels like every state and even like every municipality, every department is a little different in the way they work.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, we actually didn't even get into the conversation about professional firefighters, which is what I do. It's my full time
Hmm.
job. I work for a larger city. There are other people who are quote unquote part time, and then there's even volunteers. And those are not two that I can speak well of because I've never done either one of them. But there are more firefighters in the nation that are volunteer than there are that are professional.
Yeah,
And
especially in rural areas or
exactly.
smaller areas. Hmm.
Exactly. So I think that it's very important to make sure that we recognize that not everyone is lucky enough to work for a big city and to do it full time for a paycheck. And we have a lot of people who are very generous with their time to help their own communities.
It's, I mean, volunteer firefighters are very brave and incredible because, yeah, doing it is hard and doing it
Hmm.
for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you have to have a lot of passion for the people around you and for the job itself.
Absolutely.
So you said that you were a nurse. So I'm like I'm a little confused on what how you added nurse to your it's like a lot of hats because you're a bodybuilder,
Yes.
teacher, firefighter, paramedic, and a nurse. So tell me about the nurse part of the nurse hat.
The nurse hat. So the nurse hat is the fire department pays very, very well, and this is not a complaint at all. But I ended up being a single parent. I got divorced, and so from the age of 3 or 4, I wanted to provide more for my child. And at that time, um, so by the time my son was born, I was a paramedic. So I did make a little bit more than the regular firefighter EMT, but not a significant amount more. And when I had the opportunity to hear about nursing, first of all, it's really good for my brain. I can go and learn something. And nursing can also be applied on the fire department because it's going to make me a better paramedic because I know more about the body systems. And so that's what ended up happening. So I became the nurse, and my first job out of nursing, I ended up doing home care nursing. So most people are probably familiar with home care nursing. I worked for a local hospital system, and I went and saw people in their homes, just like most of us have relatives that have a visiting nurse that come, and they may help them after a surgery, or maybe they're a new diabetic and they need some training on that. And so that was my role as my side job.
I see. So you were like part-time
Yes.
nurse? I see.
Yes. I would probably work about 20 hours a week nursing, and usually 2 to 3 days. And it would depend on the days that I worked on the fire department. So I think you probably, in your first podcast, you interviewed Captain Jeff
Yes.
when Jeff explained the 24/48. That's
Yes.
the short version. So the 24/48 is a 24-hour shift where we work for 24 hours. In our city, it's from 0700 or 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock the next day. And then we have 2 days off. So what I would normally do on my second day off is when I would work as a nurse. So I would work during my child's school hours. And then if it happened to be a Saturday or a Sunday, I would have a babysitter to watch him. And I would try to shorten up my visits as much as possible and then do all my paperwork by the time I got home. Because with home care nursing, there's a lot of flexibility with that position. And
That's
so
what I
it
was
was,
gonna ask. They were
yeah.
okay for you to be
Oh,
like a
yeah.
little flexible, and that's
Yes,
amazing to find a second activity that you can do with a changing calendar because it's kind of hard. So you were doing the 24/48, so it's kind of like hard because it rotates, right? So it's not
it
always the
does.
same days.
Yes. So the biggest thing with firefighters is the ability to communicate with our schedules. And in the city that I'm in, we actually set our schedules somewhere between September and November of the year before the calendar that we're working on. So currently, my schedule is set through the end of December. I know
Oh,
exactly what days I'm working for all of 2026.
that's amazing.
And that schedule was set last fall. So, as the captains, because there are less captains, our schedule is normally set in September. And then the lieutenants set their schedule next. And then firefighters set their schedule after that. And that usually takes into November.
We jump a lot of steps because you were like a lieutenant last time we checked
Yes.
in your
Yes.
journey, and then you became a fire captain when?
In 2014, we have to hold a rank for 2 years before you're allowed to promote to the next rank. So for me, I stayed in the lieutenant's rank for 3 years. In the lieutenant's rank, I actually had the opportunity to work in an office. And in that office, I worked in our EMS office, and I worked in a position that was called planning and logistics. So I'm really good at analyzing statistics,
Hmm.
projecting out what the needs are going to be. And they allowed me to work with the budget and to project out what we were going to need and to make suggestions on. We carry one piece of equipment for EMS. It's called our life pack. And the life pack is what you see on TV when they hook somebody up with some cables and they take a picture of their heart.
Hmm.
And that machine in 2011 cost $35,000. so for us, for a budget, you have to have one of those at every single station. And then the goal was to get one on every single rig
Mm-hmm.
because some stations have more than one rig. And now, over the last 10 to 12 years, we have accomplished that. So we were able to project out how many more are we going to need and work that with the budget because obviously at $35,000 a pop, it's something
It's
that takes a
very
lot of planning.
expensive. Yeah.
Yes.
In your state, how do you get financed? Is it like through taxes? Generally, how do you get financed? How do you get the money to buy all the equipment?
So my understanding with all of that is with the larger cities in any state, it's normally based on the tax base within that city. But
Mm-hmm.
we can also look at everything nationally and we can see that every city out there is struggling. So, in the area that I'm in, we are using the tax base for a lot of our money. We also have some millage or some levies that are added in to help what's called public safety. So it helps the police and the fire department. And then in our city, we are lucky enough to have a woman who used to work for the local university as a grant writer, and she is now an employee of our department. And she writes phenomenal grants and gets us extra money to buy really nice things.
Oh, that's great. So you can also do apply for grants.
Yes. So I believe that there's also some federal funding in different ways. There are federal grants, there are state grants, there are grants from different universities. I'm expecting that there are probably even grants from hospital systems in some states where they may want to do a study. And because they want to do a study, they may be able to provide some supplies for that study to happen as part of.
I see.
So I think that there are a lot more
It's like
nuances.
federal, state, local,
Local.
or also like private funds for grants
Yes.
as an extra possibility for some departments.
Yes. And you actually just reminded me of something that I'm in the process of delivering to my department. There's also personal gifts, and those are recorded. But I have a friend who works for a kennel club. She's very dog oriented. And we
Mm-hmm.
recently had a fire where the dog accidentally started the fire. The dog
Oh,
jumped up and had a habit of jumping up and putting his paws on the stove. And he put his paws on the stove and pushed in on the button and ended up lighting a fire on the stove. There was a pot of grease left on the stove, and it ended up catching
no.
the house on fire. So
Oh. How's the dog?
the dog passed. But
Oh,
in the process of saving the dog, we used a pet mask. And this might be something that you look at after we get off the interview. So these pet masks are made for cats and dogs because their noses are longer. And so it's a
mm-hmm.
long, more cone shaped type product versus a human flatter type product. And it goes over the dog's nose and has kind of a silicone lip. And the oxygen goes in so that the dog can be ventilated. So my friend with her group at the Kennel Club have donated 2 full pet mask systems to our department, and I'll be giving them to our public information officer so that he can make a big deal out of it because it's a very nice gift
It's a
and
very nice gift.
to draw some attention to the Kennel Club and to thank them for that, because we do have them on most rigs, but what ends up happening is they're not a disposable product. They are washable and savable so that we can use them for the next pet. But a lot of our equipment is disposable, and sometimes in the middle of situations like that, they end up getting thrown away. And we do
Oh,
not have the budget to replace them.
so that would be something a reminder for everybody. Please do not
Yes.
trash
Yes. But things
the
happen. And then also
equipment.
sometimes people just accidentally step on it. You know what I mean? It's a fire scene
Mm-hmm.
when this is being used, and it's sometimes slightly chaotic. And so it's certainly not the goal to step on our equipment, but accidents happen. So some have been broken, some have been lost, some have been accidentally thrown away. And so we're incredibly thankful to have these 2 new kits. I believe that they've got 5 masks in each one of them. And so
Oh,
we'll have 2 of them put onto rigs that respond to every single fire. We have 2 people that go to every fire, and they'll have 1 kit on each one of those rigs. And those guys will help keep the pieces parts together so that they don't get thrown
mm-hmm.
away.
No. And then as a fire captain in the position you are now, are you the only fire captain in your station, or is it rotating as well? Because Jeff was explaining to us in the first episode how he's one of three in his, fire station. So how does your department work with that?
So in our department, we have a total of 18 stations. So it's a relatively large department. We have 113 people working on a daily basis. And sometimes there's more, but if it goes under 113, they have to recall people. So they have to come in on overtime. So my role as a captain, I became a captain in 2014. In 2020, I won the bid, which means that I was the most senior person who wanted it. And in the area that I'm at, we are directly across from a major car manufacturing plant, and it's a plant where they have, I would have to guess, 5,000 people working on a daily basis.
Oh,
So
wow.
we usually make at least one run a day over to their medical, because somebody may have gotten hurt on the line, or they may have gotten overheated, or they may be having a heart problem, or they may have just gotten hurt working. You know what I mean? They may have had a hand
Mm-hmm.
injury or an ankle injury, or they just don't feel well. And so they do have medical staff on hand, but most of the time their protocol is to call us. So then we'll go over and take a look at the patient and advise as needed.
So are you the only fire captain in that station, or do you have several captains?
So the way that our station works is I am the only captain at my firehouse, but there are two lieutenants who work on different shifts.
I see.
So we talked about the 24/48.
Mm-hmm.
So my shift is C shift. And on C shift, I'm the only officer there. And then there are 5 firefighter EMTs or firefighter paramedics
I
that are
see.
working with me. And we have an engine with 4 people on it, and we have an ambulance transport that has 2 people on it. And the engine always has at least one paramedic, which is usually me. And the ambulance transport always has at least one paramedic on it, which is one of my guys. We always just make sure that there's a paramedic there. Then on A shift and B shift, they have lieutenants that are in the same role that I am. They are the officer in charge. I just oversee everything that's needed for the station, and then they're essentially my proxy on the days that they're working. So if I'm working, I'm responsible for the engine. If I'm not going to use their first names, but if I'll just call them Joe and Mark.
Uh-huh,
If
exactly.
Joe and Mark are working on A and B shift and something happens to the engine, then Joe's going to take care of it for sure, but he's also going to send me an email that said, "Hey, this is what's going on."
Mm-hmm.
So most evenings at home, I'm checking my emails just to make sure that I'm aware of everything that's going on every day, even though I'm only working every third day. That's a role that I've chosen for myself. As the captain, you're not being paid on those days off, so you don't have to look at your emails. But my observation is if you choose not to, you have a lot more to do on those days that you work.
Yeah. And also it's good to keep an eye. And I'm pretty sure you're very detail oriented. I'm discovering you as we're talking, and I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to have
Yes,
something missed
yes,
in
yes.
your emails. Yeah. So is it mostly you would say, like, what's the percentage of work that you have at your station? Would it be like more medical, accidents related than fire?
So in the city that I work, it's about 86, it's actually above 86% is EMS. And
Mm-hmm.
it's less than 1% working fires. So in between that 86 and that 1, that's only 87. That means there's 13% that we're missing. So the 13% that we're missing are the things that are like car accidents and natural gas leaks and anything that doesn't fall under EMS or an actual working fire falls into that 13%. So you could have something like I had mentioned that dog.
Mm-hmm.
So the dog actually started a true working fire. So there was smoke in the entire house. The fire had gotten so extreme over the stove that the hood actually fell out of the ceiling.
Oh.
So there was so much fire it weakened the support. So we had to open up the whole ceiling in the kitchen to make sure that the fire hadn't extended, but the smoke had extended everywhere in the house. So that was an actual working fire.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times that a 12-year-old might be cooking mac and cheese on the stove And all that happens is they burn the mac and cheese. It creates a lot of smoke. They put a lid on the pot, but they still call 911. And so that's not actually a working fire.
That would be part of the 13%.
Exactly. So that would be called food on the stove. And those are incredibly common. Those are every day. One of our stations is going to food on the stove.
Wow.
Yes.
What would be the funniest call you got in your career?
Well, we have the funniest call. I would have to give you the story about the ducks. I'll give you the story about the
Okay.
ducks. Okay. So on Memorial Day, about 3 years ago, we had a first round rookie, which means he had just finished up training and he goes through a year of probation. So he's in our station first for about 4 months, and then he'll go to a second station on his second rotation for about 4 months, and then a third station for a third rotation for about 4 months, giving him about a year of probation. Mm-hmm. So he's on his first round rotation, which means that he knows everything that they taught him in the academy and not much else. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's why he's at my station, because we're going to teach him everything that he needs to learn. So somebody came up in front of our building and honked their horn very incessantly. And so he ran out because that's what he was supposed to do. He had to figure out what was going on. And he comes running back in the station and he goes, "Hey, Cap, the guy says that there are ducks in the sewer." And I'm like, "Wait, what? There are ducks in the sewer?" "Yeah, we got to go save the ducks in the sewer." And so I look at the other two guys that I'm working with, and the one guy goes, "Yeah, let's go save the ducks." And the last guy goes, "I don't want to go save the ducks." I said, "Well, you're my driver, so we're going to go save the ducks." And so the guy told us that it was on the far side of this big manufacturing plant that's across the street from us. And so we all jump in the rig. We picked up some equipment around the station that isn't normally kept on the engine. We found essentially like a 5-gallon bucket from a local big box store and a couple pry tools and some string. And I'm not even quite sure what else. We just threw a bunch of stuff in the bucket and threw it all in the rig. And so the guy starts driving us. He goes, "Where are we driving?" I said, "We're going to drive around on the street until we see the mama duck sitting next to the sewer." He's like, "What?" And I said, "I can guarantee Mama Duck is sitting right next to the sewer. If her babies fell in the sewer." And that's exactly what we found. So we found a mama mallard duck sitting next to a sewer. And we looked down inside that sewer, and there are 7 little babies, or what we saw were 7 little babies, beep, 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 making all kinds of noise. So we are trying to think of everything that we can to pry up that lid of the sewer that we were at. And this was one that was on the curbside. Well, they're secured in. We didn't know that at the time until we did more investigating. And they're secured in with bolts and with asphalt and with a lot of other things. And we were not moving that lid. So the other thing that we had made sure that we had is we carry a meter that's it's a confined gas meter, so that we can determine if there are levels that are dangerous. That's another one of the 13% type of runs. Natural gas leaks and things like that, carbon monoxide leaks, this machine picks all that up. So if we're moving a sewer and we have to go inside that sewer hole, we need to take that gas meter with us. So we made sure that was turned on. And one of the guys, not the new guy, the other one, went down in that hole, ended up catching 7 of the 8 ducks. And we put them all in that big bucket. So this whole thing took about probably almost an hour. So we now have a bucket of 7 ducks that are cheeping and jumping up and down. And Mama's someplace watching us, but we lost track of where she went. And I looked at the new guy and I said, "Do you want to let the ducks go out of this bucket?" And he goes, "Yeah, that would be great." So like I said, this is his first rotation. He hasn't been exposed to any of this. So he walks to the other side of the street, tipping over the bucket before he's even on the grass. He's still in the street. And one of the ducks jumps out, runs right across the street, headed back for the sewer that it just fell in.
No.
And I grabbed the bucket. I grabbed the bucket from the new guy. I'm yelling, "Go get that duck." And they blocked him before he got to the sewer. The duck went underneath the engine, and the new guy had to climb underneath the engine to try to scoot the duck back towards us. And I made the other ducks make all kinds of noise. And so it ran back towards its brothers and sisters. And we ended up catching it again.
And the new guy ended up being called Duck. Right? I'm pretty sure
So
that's stuck for the
that,
rest of his career.
well, it might have been bird brained. So
That's
we
very
ended
funny.
up taking the bucket of ducks a little farther off the road. We let it go kind of in a more wooded area, and we expect that Mama Duck found them. But I think that's probably one of the funnier stories that I can think of recently.
I see. Well, that's kind of like a whole adventure.
It is a whole adventure.
That's something that you could write a book about for, you when you were teaching the kids. Well, here's the story of Mama Duck and the sewer, right? That may be an
That
idea for another hat. Maybe you should write those little
Duck
books.
Wrangler?
Yeah,
Write
no,
little
little
books or
books
just
for the
go
kids.
into Duck Wrangler?
Or maybe, or maybe, yeah, exactly. Work with the ducks.
Work with the ducks.
That's funny.
But
And
thank you for reminding me of that fun story.
obviously, it's not always a funny job.
No.
It has a funny side of it, but most of the time, a very heavy side of it. So I'm guessing remembering the good, fun stories is a good way to cope with the bad ones.
It is. And I think that firefighters, we're taught in training and then obviously daily from that point forward. Um, you kind of have to compartmentalize things. I joke that I have a giant toolbox in the back of my brain or a file cabinet, and it's got drawers in it, and the drawers are closed for a reason. If I have to go into that file box, then I will, but I don't often have to go in there. And stories like you just asked are a fun reason to go back into that file box because it's not one that I had thought of recently.
hmm It's funny because
So
I had a dance teacher when I was a kid, and he told us about the drawers thing. And I actually told this story to someone very recently that this story stuck with me because it helped me a lot. To when I'm kind of working on different things and different hats, I'm like, okay, let me close and open the drawer. Zoop, zoop. Because, it helps you organize your brain a little bit, you know.
that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yes, and it probably helps in every field, but it's a necessity if you're in safety services.
And so, as a woman and as a fire captain, is there any difference in the fire service on how the men listen to the captain if you're a woman or if you're a man? Do you feel any kind of difference in treatments because you're a woman?
Well, for me, I'm not tall. I'm not real tall. I'm about 5'7". And when I got hired on, there were a lot of men that were still very opinionated about women on the job. Now, it helped because I had just finished bodybuilding. So I had obviously a very strong physique. I was incredibly capable of everything that was going on. And since then, when I was around the age of 40, I did powerlifting and I ended up getting some state records. So, and that was all done when I was a firefighter. So, as a firefighter, I was very strong, very capable. And I think that just like in every role that every person ever has in their working life, every single day is an interview. And so I've stayed strong, I've stayed educated, and I think both of those are highly respected. Early on, this guy kind of got in my face about he didn't think that women should be on the job. And prior to me being hired, they had actually changed how they did the physical test to get on the job. But I had nothing to do with that. I was told, go take the test, and I took the test and I passed it. And so he was kind of mouthy with me when I first got hired and said, women shouldn't be on the job. They changed the test for you. And he said it like that, you looking straight at me. And I said, well, they didn't change the test for me. They changed it because they needed to, because this one is more fair for everyone. And if you had a problem with that test, you probably should have objected when they were changing it. But the bottom line is, I took the test. And by me standing up to him, and we were in a very male oriented station at the time, and this was all done in front of others. I think that he was trying to quote unquote put me in my place. I stood up against him, and at the time, my height compared to his height was very similar. So I was looking at
Mm-hmm.
him eye to eye, and I didn't back down. I think that establishing myself at that point helped everyone else see she's not going to back down. If we're going to talk about her, we're just going to have to talk about her behind her back. So, and that's where that is. I didn't take the lieutenant's test until I had 15 years on the job. I had
Mm-hmm.
been at incredibly busy stations. I had actually been on an ambulance as a paramedic. You have to do a certain amount of time on ambulances. And the requirement was 3 years, and I had done 6. And of that 6, two of the 6 years were on a life squad that ended up being the busiest ambulance in the entire country. There's a lot of respect that goes with that. So I was at busy houses. I fought a lot of fires. I was very physically fit. And all of those led up to me being a strong minded officer. And as a strong minded officer, it's not my nature to yell. And it is my nature to listen to somebody else's opinion on things when there's time. But most of the statements that I make are sound, and it's expected that they're going to be followed. And if they're not followed, I'm not going to address it in front of our clients. I'm not going to address it at a
Mm-hmm.
fire. I'm not going to address it on an EMS run. We're going to talk about it back at the station. And there have been a couple of people that I've had to have a conversation with privately, and I've kept it private. And I think with that, there's also a level of respect. I haven't made a big deal out of it, but it was made clear that this is the role that you are in. This is the role that I am in. And if you don't follow the rules that I'm
Mm-hmm.
setting for you, I have to file paperwork. That's my role. I have to do that. If you don't do what I'm telling you to do, if I'm telling you that I need you to pull the line around to the back of the house, I don't want to hear an argument. I'd rather take it the other way. You know what I mean? I need the line in the
Yeah.
back of the house. And as long as I'm saying something that's sound in my judgment, there's really no room to argue.
Yeah. Do you feel like you had to work harder than counterpart male to get where you are? Or I mean, you're obviously extremely accomplished, and all you got is because of that accomplishment. But did you feel that you had to go over what you had to do?
I No, I don't think so. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I push myself just naturally. Like I said, I was in the role of a teacher, which I could have stayed in for my entire life, but I just didn't feel that it was giving me enough. And even now, this year, I'm turning 60, and I'm still looking at what's next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a continuous process.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, so in 2014, I became a captain. 2020, I got my firehouse. I'm actually in a new role now, starting in 2025. To now, and we can get into that next. But the basis of the answer is, I think that everyone who has gotten where they are has worked hard to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And I think that if we have had a couple of people who have played victims, and they've been male and female,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're treated like victims. If you're going to act like a victim, you're treated like a victim. If you're going to say, "Oh, poor me," you know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? I've
Mm-hmm.
I've been on the ambulance too much. We're going to talk about you, because I was on an ambulance for 6 years. You know what I mean? You've been on the ambulance for 2 months straight. I'm sorry. You're going to be on the ambulance again tomorrow. It's
Yeah.
just that's your role right now. And I'm sorry that you're not happy about it, but you need to fill that role.
And do you think that there is an evolution? Like, you've been in a career for 30 years, and obviously we're seeing more female firefighters now as it was like 30 years ago. Do you think there's an evolution in the mentality and like women are a little bit more welcomed into the service?
I think that it's a twofold approach. I think yes. I think that children being raised 30 years ago saw women accomplishing things. I think it was 1986 that Sally Ride was on the Challenger. She was an astronaut.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's that type of thing. We've had a woman run for president. We've had a woman vice president. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are seeing women in so many different roles. Obviously, there are women physicians everywhere. There are women in construction. There are women who do roofing. There's women who pour concrete. There's women in every role. And there's also a lot, percentage wise, a lot more women in the police force. I want to say that the police force is nearly 30% women, which is, yes, our society is 50-50. But when you're looking at the role of a police officer, I'm a lot more comfortable being female as a firefighter than I would be as a female police officer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's just my observation. So I think that we have children being raised seeing very capable women. And then I also see women that are highly capable applying for the job. I think that there are a lot of women to choose from. we have a woman who has a master's degree. She's got an MBA. How unusual is that? And she's a personal trainer in her side job.
A lot of hats. Do guys,
So, you know
wear a
what I
lot of
mean?
hats? Yeah.
We have a lot of women who are incredibly accomplished, and a lot of our men are also. We have many that are prior military, women that are prior military. So we have some really highly qualified candidates that are coming into this job, and it's easy to pick the best one. And amazingly, we have enough to choose that we end up with a diverse department. There's always room for growth, and the more that you apply yourself, those opportunities come naturally.
And I love that. And so we're talking about opportunities, and you have a new one coming up. You are going to share about your new role in 2026.
Yes. So, well, it actually started in 2025. We have a very strong union, and we negotiated a new position for our current contract that we're in. And it's an acronym. So, just like the military, the fire department and the police department have lots of acronyms, and it's called
Mm-hmm.
FLOAT. So, just like you float around, FLOAT. And I believe that the acronym is Flexible Labor Operations and Training. What that means is on a daily basis, I can be used to cover training. And it's allowed me to work a 40-hour work week, which is much different than the 24/48. So with the 40-hour work week, I work Tuesdays through Fridays, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., or we call it 1700. So I'm 7 to 1700. And during Tuesday through Friday, I cover training. So what I'll do, if a captain is going to training, that's the easy button. I just go cover that captain. But if there isn't a captain who's going to training, which sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't, then because of my background as a paramedic, I can be used to cover a paramedic or a lieutenant. And so I can be used anywhere, any day for any training, which is a really fun thing for me because, like I said, I like to have new things every 5 years. It just so happened it literally landed in my lap 5 years after I got the position. I still oversee that from a back seat. There's another captain that's working in there right now. He's incredibly capable, and he and I communicate regularly. So I don't have any worries about my firehouse. And so now on a daily basis, I get to go and work with different people than I normally work with. And I get to cover training, which I really enjoy because the more training we can do, the better we're going to be as a whole.
Mm-hmm. So you're working like the whole week. So it's kind of like a full-time job. When do you rest? Because it's not like I understand like a lot of people are doing like desk jobs. So the desk job, you can have like a more like a 9 to 5 job. But right now you are floating to one
Yes.
position to another. And so you're working
Yes.
nonstop for the whole week.
Well, it's still only a 10-hour day.
I see what you mean. You get to sleep.
I get to sleep, and I get to sleep at home, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
hear tones overnight. So, and I think that you've probably heard some little paw prints in the background. I have a puppy at home. So, yeah, yeah,
Yes, I was gonna say, we are actually three guests today. There is also Kalho in the back, right?
yes. So she is actually doing a really great job ignoring me right now. But she's an 18-month-old cattle dog, and she's very busy. And she stays with a friend of mine when I'm working. And then I pick her up after work and I bring her home. And so I have a very nice work-life balance in that I'm working a 40-hour work week just like most Americans do. So during my 10-hour shift, I start off at a firehouse. If I'm covering a captain, then I've got some certain responsibilities for that. If I'm covering a paramedic on an ambulance, I have different responsibilities. But I'm only working a 10-hour shift, and I'm used to working a 24-hour shift. So for me, the mental break with a 10-hour day is, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's a very nice
Mm-hmm.
change in my schedule, and I'm blessed to be able to do this position for 18 months before I have to go back.
I was gonna ask you, how long is it gonna be? Like 18 months?
So it's 18 months. We used to be able to go to a different position for up to 24 months, but the union decided that was too long, so they negotiated it down to 18
I
months.
see.
But with that, the opportunity that I have right now, because of my background, I mentioned the planning and logistics, I'm very good at analyzing things. So I'm looking at how we're being used for training, and I'm trying to make suggestions up my chain of command, all the way up to the deputy chief over operations He's essentially like the third or fourth in command. He's in the top five. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a list of things to discuss with him because I see things that are working very, very well. And I see things that I think could be honed a little bit better. And I'm hoping to be able to share all of this information with our higher ups before I leave after the 18 months so that we can make the program better as it continues on. And I'm also hoping to get another officer in my role so that I can kind of train that officer to see the things that I've been seeing and hope that they can continue the analysis of the program. Because this is a brand new program, it just started last June, we have a lot of room for growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking forward to having that opportunity.
Are you thinking about retiring at some point, or you're like, no, that's not for me, not yet?
Well, so just like everyone else in this nation, we have to consider childcare and healthcare. So with childcare, my child is now 24.
Mm-hmm.
So I can help pay for healthcare for my child until he's 26. So with that, I'm probably going to stay for another 2 years because if I have to pay for healthcare for me and my child and I'm not working, it's incredibly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
There's nuances with that. It right now, I feel like I'm still providing a very good benefit to my job. We've all worked with people who kind of retired before they retired. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I
And
know.
and I'm not one of those people. So if I'm acting like I'm retired, it's time for me to go. But if I'm
I
acting
see.
like I'm a new hire and I'm still showing up and my shoes are shiny and my clothes are pressed, then I think I'm still bringing a lot to the table and I think I still have a lot to offer. So I'm not planning on retiring tomorrow. Um, I do have a window that I'm considering, but there's nothing firm at this point.
That's great. And so let's talk a little bit before we talk about, your motorcycle riding passion. You also are a scuba diver.
Yes. So
How did you get into it?
some very good friends of mine are scuba divers, and it's my BFF. Her husband is an instructor. So I had the opportunity to visit a small island where he actually had a house, and I learned everything that I needed to learn up in Ohio. And then I visited his house and I learned how to scuba. So while I was there, I got to see some amazing wildlife and experience part of the world that most people never get to see. And I was absolutely hooked. So since then,
Mm-hmm.
with scuba diving, just kind of like the fire department, there are different levels. So I'm in the process of obtaining the next level of education with that, and I'm working on what's called a dive master. So what I will do in the role of dive master, if I was employed as a scuba dive master, I would help people on trips where there may be an instructor or a lead dive master leading the trip. And then I would help possibly in the back of the group. And then it would be the clients in between. And we just both make sure that everybody goes from point A to point B safely and that they don't have any problems. And then we help point out wildlife if I was working in that role.
I see. Do you have opportunity to do diving around you? You have a lot of lakes around you, right?
We do. We're right at Lake Erie, and Lake Erie actually, I believe, has the most sunken ships in the Great Lakes. But I have not done any freshwater diving in the northern states area. I've had the opportunity to go to some quarries, and I got to dive in a mine in Missouri, which was pretty fascinating. But most of my diving is done in warm tropical waters in other places in the world. And
Which is great because you get to travel
I
and
do.
be in the hot weather.
I do.
Because how cold is it right now in Ohio?
Seeing if I can pull up my weather app like all of us have on our phones. Right now,
Yeah.
the current weather today is 25 and it feels like 21.
Ooh.
Yes,
Yes.
and
I'm
that's
sending you
Fahrenheit.
some California vibe with a little bit of
Oh, I appreciate that.
heat.
I appreciate that.
Before we talk about your motorcycling, just a little question I forgot to ask you. Talking about the weather and talking about how the states are all different. What is the most challenging situation that you have to face that's very, locally specific? I'm guessing you have snow as well, and do you have any other things that's specific to your area?
Yes. So, in fact, I appreciate you going there. Right now, winter weather in northern Ohio is a challenge for the fire department. So, surprise, water freezes. And surprise, we have to use water at
Surprise.
fires. And therefore, we end up with incredibly dangerous situations because there is frozen water on the road around where the driver has to move. And we've had drivers get hurt. We've had firefighters get hurt because we'll end up with water on a driveway and somebody may not see it coming out. Or we'll end up with water going downstairs, but it's a vacant. So a vacant doesn't have any heat. So this house is the same temperature as the outside. And we're flowing water, but the stairs are actually 20 degrees. And so now the stairs are covered in a sheet of ice. And I've personally fallen downstairs in a household because the ice, the stairs froze.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've also got the aspect of depending on how big the structure is that you're fighting fire with. We have a piece of equipment on top of our fire engine called a deck gun. It's like a giant metal nozzle, but it's attached directly into the engine of the fire engine. And so it can pump huge amounts of water very, very quickly. And what has happened in the past is the water is shooting out of there and it's actually turning into snow as it's approaching the house
Oh.
that it's going onto. Or it gets on the house and it's dripping down and it's freezing as that is happening. And it's going inside and it's dripping and it's freezing. You know what I mean? Even though the house is on fire, there's still ice. So it's kind of that oxymoron. You're not really expecting it. But as you get experience on the job, you realize ice is a big problem in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, and
Yeah,
that's something that we don't think about in California.
right. So then when you have snow, especially large amounts of snow, you have to be able to find the fire hydrant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a problem. So you may have little blue markers on your road where the fire hydrants are, but that are reflective. Do you have blue reflectors on your
Mm,
streets where the
here,
fire
no.
hydrants are? No? Okay. So Florida does. I think that's a great idea. And one of my friends is like, yeah, you guys should put those blue markers on so that you can find the fire hydrants in the wintertime. I said, we can't see the roads in the wintertime because they're covered in snow. So, so the reflectors don't always work, but I think that it's a great idea. But one of the bigger problems is our fire hydrants freeze. We are taught to use a safety flare. Most people are aware of those red flares that police and fire use so that we can encourage traffic to go in a certain direction on a highway or on a road. You can
Mm-hmm.
actually use a flare to melt a fire hydrant so that we can get the caps off so that we can hook up a hose. And we're taught how to do that here in Ohio.
Wow.
And that's probably not something that most of your firefighters do in California.
No, no, in California, there's other issues and other, like
Yes.
challenges, but I think ice
Yes.
is not one of
So
them.
that
Yeah. That's a very specific situation
it
that you
is
have to face every day
in the winter.
in the
In the
winter.
winter.
Yeah. On top of all the hats that you're already like wearing, and we're discovering you're also a biker.
I am a biker. So I've had the opportunity to ride since I was 24. So I don't want to do that math, but I've been riding for quite a while. And
Mm-hmm.
so when my kid was 6, I had ridden quite a bit long distance before my kid was born. Then after my kid was born, I realized I really wanted to ride and I wanted to show my kid life on a motorcycle. So I worked with a friend of mine and I designed and had my friend fabricate a special seat for the motorcycle for my kid at the age of 6. And it expanded while he grew and he used it from the age of 6 to the age of 12. And in that period of time, the first trip that we did was around Lake Erie. And we took 3 days. We went to Niagara Falls, which is an amazing place, and we came back through Canada. So he already had a passport, but he got to go through places like Montreal where the street signs are in French. So my kid got to experience life in another country on a motorcycle.
That's great.
So at the age of 6, we went all the way around Lake Erie. And then I kind of got an idea. I'm like, hey, I should try to get my kid to every state on the motorcycle. Let's see what I can do. And I kind of planned things out year by year, and we took different chunks of states here and there. And I ended up getting him to the lower 48 on the motorcycle with just me by the age of 12.
I love that.
So he got to see the entire United States by the age of 12 in the lower 48. I had gotten him to Hawaii when he was 6. We had a friend out there. And then when he was 16, I got him to Alaska. And in Alaska, we found a motorcycle sitting outside of a business, and somebody was walking towards it. And we convinced him to let my kid sit on his motorcycle. So my kid actually has sat on a motorcycle in 49 of the 50 states.
Oh, is he a
Yes.
biker now
So
himself?
he's not, which is just so crazy.
No.
I know, just so crazy. But I gave the opportunity. And the bottom line is when you raise a child, you want them to be independent. You want them to do their own thing. And so my kid has loves that aren't things that I'm even familiar with. And so he has to educate me about all these different
New
things.
things for you
And
and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so he had the opportunity to learn and move on.
So now you have a new companion, you have a new rider on your bike because I've seen
I
the
do.
pictures of your
Yes.
dog behind you. So tell
Yes.
us about the adventures with your dog.
So I have a little cattle dog. Her name is Kalho. She was born with a unibrow, and if you're familiar with the artist Frida Kahlo, her unibrow rivaled Frida's,
Yeah.
and so she is my little Kalho. And being a cattle dog, she's very smart, and they are known for being creative if you don't train them. So my goal is to train her as fully as I can in anything that I do. So I want her to be able to travel with me. So I've taught her how to ride on the motorcycle. So we started with some really generic Amazon goggles that cost about $20, and she learned how to wear the goggles. And then we progressed to the goggles that she's wearing now as a full grown dog.
Oh.
And she's got a little case behind my seat, so she sits in the passenger seat. She's secured for anyone who's listening to the
Yes,
podcast. She will
exactly.
not fall off. She will not fall off the bike. She is secured. She wears a special harness that actually tightens around her front legs if she pulls too much. So she's encouraged not to pull, but she's attached with a front clip harness to the seat that's in between us. So I have a backrest for my seat, and she's attached with a front clip harness to the back of my seat, and then she's attached behind her. So she can turn 180 degrees in both directions, but she just cannot turn 360 degrees in a full circle.
She can't jump.
She cannot jump. The front harness keeps her chest so that she can put her front paws on my shoulders, but she can't jump out.
Mm-hmm.
So she does do that when we're in the curves. She loves to put her feet up on my shoulder and kind of look over my shoulder
Oh.
and look around. One end of the little case that she sits in has a mesh end, so she can actually lay down and look out almost like a window. And so she can look at things. If it's a boring ride, she doesn't have to just look at like a black side of the case that she's in. And we have to stop about every 2.5 hours just for fuel. So she gets off the bike and goes with me. She's now certified as a service dog because my expectation is over time my body's going to diminish.
Mm-hmm.
And she helps me. She knows how to pick things up and bring them to me and stuff like that.
Oh, I love that. She's beautiful. I love the pictures. So your club is called the Axemen, and is it like a firefighters club?
It is. It is. So to be part of the Axemen, primarily you have to be a professional firefighter. So we had talked a little earlier about the part time and the volunteer. There are motorcycle clubs for part time and for volunteer, but the Axemen is specifically for professional firefighters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky enough to have brothers in this club that are in New York City, Chicago, Houston, some areas outside of LA, Myrtle Beach, Philadelphia. I mean, some really, really big cities in the big departments in this country. And we're all professional firefighters. And we love riding motorcycle, and we're really good at raising money for charity. So that's the goal of this Axemen Motorcycle Club is, for one, it's the camaraderie, the brotherhood of the firehouse, but it's also to raise money for charity and to do good things with our energies. So,
I love that.
yeah.
And this is why you're choosing this as the closing call for the fundraising for this episode. We'll share the link.
Thank you. My chapter is it's Eastern Ohio. They're very near the city of Youngstown, which is a town that a lot of people have heard of. But most of the guys so I'm in Northwest Ohio and they're Eastern Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot in common with the guys that are in that chapter, and they welcomed me into their chapter just this last year. And it's a phenomenal group of guys. With me in it, there's only 11 in that chapter. So that's a very small chapter. To reference, Detroit, I believe, has 80 guys in it, 80.
Wow.
So 11 is tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing for the Axemen started in Detroit. That's one of the reasons that their chapter is so big. But the cities of Chicago and Philly have more firefighters available. So it's easy to get a bigger
Have
group.
a bigger group.
Yes. So with the firefighters that are in the Youngstown area, many of them work for smaller departments. So I was saying, like, we have 113 people working every single day. There are some of their departments that they're like, one of the bigger departments only has 17 working a day. So fighting fires in that scenario is so much different because they have to now pull firefighters from other areas. It's called mutual aid. So they have to work with people that they may not know because they're not familiar with the people that are on shift in those communities that are coming into their station. So or into their area for their emergency. So there are a lot of dynamics for those guys. So I'm learning so much about their departments and how they're doing things because I've been very spoiled in my department because it's so solid. You know what I mean? It's
so
very
you're
straightforward.
writing and you're sharing stories and you're sharing awareness about how you guys works in the different departments.
Exactly.
But you also like talking about other things, or mostly you work?
Mostly work and motorcycles. And then where's the next trip for the motorcycles going to go? So
I love that. So what's the next trip so we can finish in the little adventure mode?
So the next trip that I'm taking with my guys that are in my chapter is going to be a trip to Rochester, New York, because we have a big meeting up there. And so right now we are designing merchandise for us to sell at the meeting for our chapter specifically. And so they're coming through and they're making mouse pads and they're making just swag. I was call it swag. And so we're designing all these fun things and we're making all these fun things. And then we're planning how are we going to get from Ohio to Rochester? And there's a very good chance that we're going to go to Detroit and go the wrong direction so that we can ride through Canada, so that we can ride to Niagara Falls and then go to Rochester, just because it's fun to do that on a motorcycle.
And it's
There's
beautiful.
no fun. And it's absolutely beautiful. And it's no fun just to go from like Eastern Ohio straight north to New York. You know what I mean? It would be a beautiful ride, but it will only be a few hours. Let's take 2 or 3 days.
So is Kalho going?
Kalho is going to go.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
So that's something we're going to maybe like make a promise of sending me the pictures of Kalho's journey in the bike and
I can certainly make
your
that.
new adventure.
I can certainly make that promise. Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Kim. It's been like an amazing episode. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience and all your journey with us and the dream of the adventures. And we will share the link to the Axemen chapter of, is it Eastern Ohio, you said?
They call themselves Steel Valley. And that's based on
Steel Valley.
It's a Steel Valley chapter. And that's based on with Pittsburgh being relatively nearby in Cleveland and a lot of the iron industry. So the Steel Valley.
Perfect. So we'll share the link and we'll just follow up what they're doing with the charity and also the journeys and the adventure on the bike.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care. Stay safe.
Yes. Bye-bye.
This was Chats with Firefighters on most podcast platforms and on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Chats with Firefighters.